Hey guys, it's me, Doc here, starting this new channel, and today I'm going to be talking about something that 95% of Americans don't get enough in their diet. 95%. But today I'm specifically going to be focusing on something that is very interesting to me, and that's colon cancer, the American diet, and fiber. And that is what most Americans don't get enough of in their diet. Going back to that statistic, again, 95% of people, of Americans, do not get their daily fiber recommendation, right? In the last few decades, the incidence of colorectal cancer has changed significantly. All right, it used to be something that people over 50, but within the last few years, right, the people getting it over 50 has actually been going down due to better screening, while adults in their 20s, their 30s, and their 40s, the number of people getting colon cancer has actually gone up, right? So in 2024, 2025, colorectal cancer, colon cancer has become the number one cause of death for cancer for women and men under 50. The number one cause of cancer death, right? It's colon cancer. That's changed the scene completely, really. All right. It used to be something that was a cancer for elderly, but now it's the leading cause of cancer death in men and women under the age of 50. That's a huge, huge contrast, right? Now, the number of cases for people over 65 are actually going down because of better screening, while younger and younger adults, the number of cases have actually been going up almost 2% since the mid 1990s. That's a big deal, all right? And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about why we think that is. So, going back to the statistics, all right. In 2026, the American Cancer Society, um, just in 2026 alone, right, 158,000 Americans will be diagnosed with colon cancer, right? And 20% of those new diagnoses are people under the age of 55, all right, which is significant. So, in their lifetime, 1 in 23 men and 1 in 25 women will develop colon cancer in their life. That's like a lot, all right? 1 in 25 for women, 1 in 23 for men. What's more concerning is when younger patients are diagnosed, they're diagnosed at stage 3 or stage 4 because symptoms are just dismissed. Like if I have a little bleeding down there, it might be like IBS or hemorrhoids, but it's actually like cancer. And then people who are younger don't really take serious screening until like 40s or 50s. So they just kind of dismiss it. And then when it gets really serious, that's when they, get a colonoscopy, they go see a doctor, and then by then, like, it's getting pretty late, right? And when you get to late stage cancer, the mortality or the death goes up a lot. And so going back to the question, why has there been this increase in rise of colon cancer? And, there's a lot of research going on, but it's not just necessarily one single cause, right? It's kind of like this perfect storm of all these factors just coming together in the right spot and making this shift. So it's kind of biological, environmental, and lifestyle. All these factors play a role. And one thing we definitely attribute it to is the American diet, right? This metabolic shift, the rise in obesity, all right? When you have high calories and you have a diet that lacks a lot of nutrition and fiber, it puts people at risk, right? Let's go talk about ultra processed foods. When you take a lot of red meat, processed meat, nitrites, bacon, sausage, sugary drinks, crackers, cookies, with all these preservatives. That just kind of like is a perfect storm to cause chronic inflammation in your gut. Because, our bodies aren't necessarily created to eat. Oreos or processed foods over years and years and years. We're just not meant for that. And then throw in large chunks of sugar, drinks with high fructose corn syrup, or, you know, can of Coke. It definitely does not help because that sugar can sometimes feed tumor growth. And then with the fat, the processed foods, the sugar, obesity rates rise. And so when obesity rates rise in early childhood, it puts these people at an earlier state to develop this inflammation. So if you're obese and you start being obese at the age of 8 years old, you know, you might have 10 years worth of chronic inflammation that builds up if you compared yourself to somebody who has maybe reached obesity at the age of 18, right? 8-year old, 18-year old, 10 years, 10 years of obesity. That builds up a lot of inflammation, right? You get insulin resistance, and all these things just kind of are a fuel for cancer cells. And then you have to talk about the gut microbiome. And that's that ecosystem of beneficial bacteria in your gut. And so if you have a bout of food poisoning and then you wash away all the gut bacteria, the beneficial ones, you have to kind of replace that stuff with good beneficial bacteria. And if you don't, because your diet is garbage, then it puts you at risk of cancer. Another thing that happens is often there are some people that take too many antibiotics, and then that washes away the beneficial bacteria. Or if you don't have enough fiber, it starves that beneficial bacteria. And those bacteria produce anti-cancer compounds, right? And so getting rid of that microbiome can really affect how cancer develops. Um, Talking about environmental exposures as well, not just antibiotics, but things like microplastics have become a little bit more common, right? There's accumulation in the gut that can cause irritation, physical irritation, chemical toxicity, and this can lead to cellular mutations. Also, things like forever chemicals, the PFASs. It's found in everything like the nonstick pans, food packaging, you know, these can disrupt endocrine hormones and interfere with how your cells repair. So these exposures do have an effect. And then, if you're not eating well and you don't exercise, then you get obese, you have this sedentary lifestyle, right? Um, Physical inactivity will mess with your hormones. And if you are not exercising, it actually makes you move your waist through your fluids slower. So if you exercise, it helps regulate your hormones and you kind of go faster. So if you don't exercise, then all that junk just has a longer run time and contact with your colon. So your colon kind of gets exposed to this longer periods of the junk, right? In fact, a study found that women who spent more than 14 hours a week sitting, watching TV and doing nothing, they had a 69% higher risk of getting early colon cancer. So it just shows that movement and exercise is important to just move things along and get more regular. So all these things like the diet, environmental exposure, obesity, the gut microbiome, and a lifestyle where you don't exercise puts you at risk. While you can't change your genetics, these things you can modify: your sedentary lifestyle, your diet, your gut microbiome. So almost 50% of colon cancer cases are almost preventable with lifestyle changes, right? And the best defense I want to say against colon cancer is fiber, right? And why is fiber so good? Well, first of all, okay, you need to know what is fiber, right? Fiber is just a carbohydrate that your body can't digest. And that sounds kind of stupid, right? But that's what makes it so powerful. It's like a regulator, right? Fiber is something that your body cannot digest. So you eat other things, like bread and carbs, whatever, it breaks down into sugar. But fiber passes through your gut intact. There's two kinds. There's soluble fiber, which kind of dissolves into water and forms a gel-like material. It helps lower your blood sugar, your cholesterol. And then there's insoluble fiber. That is like the compact stuff that promotes the movement of material through your digestive system, increases your stool bulk, if you will, right? Um, it's like if you eat if you eat a tree bark, you're not gonna digest that. That's if you were able to eat it, it'll just pass through, right? And fiber is good because it's a great defense against carcinogens that develop in your colon, helps move along this transit time. So all the waste and all the toxins spend less time in contact with your colon walls, right? So if you're eating all this junk and all this poop, if you will, right, with waste and toxins, if you don't have fiber, it's just kind of slowly moving along, slowly. And your colon sees more contact and potentially has a higher risk of developing colon cancer over a long period of time. Now throw in fiber, right? Smooths things along, and then your colon will spend less time with the toxins. So, great defense. Get the toxins out, spend less time, have less risk developing colon cancer, right? You got to eat a lot of fiber. For women, it's 25 grams per day. For men, it's 38 grams a day. All right. Get it however you want. Beans, avocados, bananas, healthy grains, and and limit your processed meats, right? So, like I said, the toxins, nitrates, the sausages, the hot dogs, right? The World Health Organization has classified these processed meats as type 1 carcinogens. It's the same category as tobacco. Yes, they're not going to just like cause cancer, but with repeated exposure over and over and over again and less defense with less fiber, then you're going to be at a higher risk. It's just a ratio, right? All right, so what else can you do for lifestyle modifications? We talk about fiber. So eat more fiber, eat less meats, eat less processed foods, all right? Physical activity, weight management, lose fat. You know, the fat around your belly will produce inflammatory hormones that, you know, puts your body at a higher risk of mutations. So get rid of that fat. Also increase your physical activity so that, your body gets a little bit more regular with that movement rather than just staying sedentary and not exercising. So that puts you at like a slower transit time. So exercise, 20 minutes a day, walking, will help your body support just that digestion and it'll reduce the insulin resistance, that puts your body at risk of developing for diabetes. So, um, other things that you can do is try and limit your exposure to some of the weird things that we talk about, like plastics, but that's really hard to do nowadays since plastics is everywhere, right? Vitamin D. Make sure you're taking your vitamin D, especially if you live somewhere in the north where you don't get a lot of sun. And make sure you eat enough calcium to help find bile acids and get rid of the fatty acids in your gut. So then, you have less exposure to some of these toxins. Another thing that you can do that helps is limit how much alcohol you take. Um, because alcohol breaks down into acetaldehyde that can damage your DNA and prevent cells from repairing themselves. So they say that no alcohol, no amount of it is completely safe. They say you should limit it to one, but there are studies that say you shouldn't drink any. So if you do drink alcohol, try and limit it. Probably what's best is none. But some people, that might be hard. And then what you can do nowadays is screen early. So other types of cancers, it's hard to screen. But colon cancer is actually quite preventable because it starts with a small polyp in your colon. And so a GI doctor, a gastroenterologist, they can do a colonoscopy. They go up your butt, yep, with a camera, and it's a diagnostic tool and a treatment because if they find a polyp, they can just cut it off and remove it and stops the cancer before it starts because it starts with that polyp. And if it just is there and you let it grow, 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 then it'll grow bigger and then it'll spread, and that's how you get metastatic colon cancer. But if they find a polyp and they remove it, then it doesn't have a chance to grow, it doesn't have a chance to spread. So now the guidelines have actually changed. They say that at age 45, you should start screening. And and if you have a first degree relative, which is like a parent or a sibling who's had colon cancer, you should actually start at the age of 40. 40, okay? Um, that's pretty early, all right? And so people that age don't think about colon cancer, but the guidelines really say that, right? You should start at 45. If you have a close relative, you should start 40 because this stuff is preventable. If they see a polyp, you just cut it and then that gets rid of it, right? It's all about prevention and it's all about screening. Yes, it's uncomfortable to kind of go through that process and go through the whole colonoscopy, but it's one of these things that unfortunately, with all the lifestyle changes and the diet and the environmental exposure that's going on nowadays, you just have to do it, really. All right. And it's just the circumstances of what we're living in, right? Healthcare is often like a repair shop where you have to fix the problem, right? We spend millions, billions, trillions of dollars treating diseases that are fundamentally caused by not taking care of yourself. You know, you don't eat, you don't exercise, you get fat, you get hypertension, high blood pressure, you get diabetes, and all these things just puts your body at chronic inflammation and at a higher risk for developing cancer. And then you go through all the chemo, surgeries, and it's just bad lifestyle. You don't want that because it's to the point where you just have to treat and fix things, but the mindset that people should have is about prevention, right? If you eat the fiber, you eat your beans, you eat your avocados and prevent uh, getting colon cancer or high blood pressure or diabetes in the first place. It's just far, far more effective than the treatment that you get for fixing the problem once it's there, right? If you eat your $3 of broccoli, every day, it's just going to save you so much more money than a $300,000 hospital stay for treatment once you develop a problem, right? Prevention is key, and prevention is fiber. That's just what it is, right? Um, it adds up, and I think people don't talk about prevention as much as treatment. We can fix the problem. We have developed new technology and new medications and new drugs and procedures that can fix. We should be thinking about preventing, because then you don't have the problem in the first place, right? And it's my belief that it's a balancing act, Sometimes it's so convenient to just have a hamburger from McDonald's. Uh, but it's one of those things that shouldn't add up and be something that you do every single day, maybe every single week, It should be something that you should do every once in a while, for convenience sake, if you will, right? It's just because if you think about it, it's like smoking a cigarette, right? Yes, smoking one cigarette will not absolutely get you cancer, but let's smoke a cigarette today, and then let's smoke a cigarette uh, every other day. Uh, it kind of adds up, right? Yeah, yeah. Maybe if you smoke a cigarette every once a month, it's probably not going to be that big of a deal. Uh, Once a week. Okay, that's probably a higher risk every day. Then yeah, you're putting yourself at a higher risk of developing lung cancer. You can say the same thing for eating like junk food and processed foods and not eating enough fiber. Okay, I will eat junk food once a year. Big whoop. Once a month. It's probably not that big of a deal. Once a week. You're kind of increasing your risk every day. Junk food, processed foods, sugar. Yeah, over years and years and years, your colon's not going to be happy, right? It's just like smoking. Prevention is key rather than, treatment. Fiber, fiber, fiber. Fiber really is that secret weapon, okay? And then going back to what I said in the very beginning, 95% of Americans do not meet the daily fiber recommendation. Okay. That's 25 grams for women. That's 38 grams for men. That's a lot of food. Okay. All right. Beans, veggies, whole grains, oats, chia seeds, that kind of stuff, right? Like if you eat an avocado, that's like, I want to say 8 grams of fiber or so, right? You got to eat a lot of avocados to get there, right? Um, Something that you just have to work on. It's hard for me. It's hard for a lot of people. There are supplements that you can take to help increase your fiber, but you really should try and get that goal every single day. 25 for women, 38 for men, right? It sucks, but you got to do it, right? If Americans, if Americans treated fiber like they do protein, then you would not believe the amount of health benefits Americans would receive. Everybody's so focused on getting, 50, 70, 100 grams of protein a day. I got to eat my fish. I got to eat my chicken. I got to drink my protein shake. Yeah, I got to get stronger. Yeah, but you have to also get your fiber, Yes, that protein's important for maintaining your weight, your muscles, all sorts of things, right? But protein doesn't, prevent colon cancer, right? Uh, People out there, some people out there will poop like once a week. That's not normal, okay? That's not normal. People should be more regular. You should be pooping almost every single day, right? And you want to have bulk, right? If everybody was so focused on getting, I gotta get 40 grams of fiber in me, and I gotta make sure my poop goes smooth like this, you know, it really would help your body in a lot more ways than just preventing colon cancer. You will have less bad cholesterol, your sugars will probably be more in control, and you probably just feel better overall. So that's my ramble. You know, Colon cancer is growing in the United States because of bad diet. Nobody's taking fiber, less people exercise, there's a rising incidence of obesity. All these factors are not helping, right? And it's hard. It's hard to take fiber. It's hard to be proactive and get a colonoscopy when you're young early. But these things are really important to do. Thanks for listening to me today. And if you find anything valuable, please give this video a like, subscribe, and share. If there's anything that you want to comment on, I'll be looking for the comments. Have a nice day.